What's even worse than that, they are trying to subordinate themselves to a ruler, Trump, who doesn't want them as subordinates. They are begging, let us be your slaves. And he says, no, I don't want you to be my slaves. So it's pretty comical, really. Uh, Look, the reason why we have fallen behind the technologies of the future, which are what? Green energy, which is solar panels and wind power and fusion, you know, is because we haven't invested anything. Germany used to be the top-notch producer of solar panels in the year 2000, right? And what happened? They stopped investing it. The Chinese have overtaken them by two industrial revolutions, not just one. They are two industrial revolutions ahead of European manufacturers of solar panels. Similarly with electric vehicles. This idiocy that the Chinese are dumping cheap products because of the Chinese government's subsidies. This is all rubbish. They simply have technologies that we don't have in the European Union. Why? Because they have invested. We spent the last 20 years not investing. And the chickens come home to roost at some point. When you miss out 20 years of investment at the time of a technological revolution, that's it. You're done. And what they have done instead of investing is regulating. They, in their immense inanity, they thought that, well, okay, we don't invest, but we are a 500 million strong economy, which is true. And because of our heft, because of our magnitude, of our size, we're going to regulate. We are going to impose our own standards on the rest of the world. Well, it doesn't work for very long, that policy. If you don't have any cloud capital, as I call the capital that lives in the cloud, then at some point, the cloud capital is going to overtake your own regulations. You heard the talk in town in Brussels that, oh, if Trump imposes these awful tariffs on our goods, on our cars, and this and that, on our aluminium, and our Hermes bags and Louis Vuitton and so on, then we are going to slap digital taxes on big tech, Silicon Valley.
Europe is begging to be America's slaves. And the worst part, Washington doesn't even want us. That's not a headline. That's Yanis Varoufakis, former Greek finance minister, economist, and one of Europe's most outspoken critics, dropping a truth bomb that should make every European leader lose sleep tonight. In his latest interview, Varoufakis doesn't just criticize Brussels. He rips apart the very idea that Europe is in control of its future. And what he reveals about our economic dependence on the United States will shock you. For years, European leaders have talked about strategic autonomy, about standing on our own 2 feet in a world dominated by superpowers. But according to Varoufakis, that's a dangerous illusion. Behind the speeches, behind the flags, and the summits, Europe has spent the last 2 decades falling behind in the technologies that define the future: green energy, electric vehicles, advanced manufacturing. And while China invested massively and the United States doubled down on its tech giants, what did Europe do? It regulated, it debated, it boasted about being a 500 million strong economy capable of imposing its rules on the rest of the world. But in reality, those rules mean nothing if you don't control the technology, the supply chains, and the innovation that drives the 21st century. Varoufakis says we've missed not one but 2 entire industrial revolutions. Germany, once the global leader in solar panel production, has been eclipsed by China's unstoppable rise. In electric vehicles, in battery technology, in AI, Europe is a spectator in a race it once led. And the worst part, instead of fixing the problem, we're clinging to a master who doesn't even want us. Trump and the Washington establishment don't see Europe as a partner. They see it as leverage, a pawn in a bigger game against China. The first thing Europe must do is stop acting like the economic arm of the United States. And his plan begins with something as simple as it is explosive: scrap every single tariff against China that Brussels imposed at Washington's request. Think about it. While Europe struggles with an energy crisis, a massive tech gap, and inflation hammering households, we're still paying more for goods we could get cheaper and better just to follow another country's agenda. Those tariffs on solar panels, they didn't come from Brussels. They came from an office in Washington with a message loud and clear: if we're in an economic war with China, so are you. But as Varoufakis asks, why should we go to war against the one country producing, at low cost, the technology we desperately need to survive climate change? His proposal is direct. Open a serious, stable line of communication with Beijing. Buy what Europe needs without asking anyone's permission. Negotiate based on our own interests, not blind loyalty. This isn't about becoming a vassal state to China the way we've been to the United States. It's about regaining the power to decide who we trade with and on what terms. Because every extra euro we spend on a solar panel or an electric car just to obey someone else's sanctions is a euro not invested in innovation, jobs, or our own future. And here's the gut punch from Varoufakis. The United States is not our ally in this economic war. It's our competitor, and if we keep obeying, they will drag us down with them. Varoufakis' next move is something that would send tremors through Washington's think tanks. A coordinated economic stimulus between the European Central Bank and the People's Bank of China. Yes, you heard that right. Europe and China working hand in hand to inject massive liquidity into their economies at the same time. Why? Because both economies are staring down the same storm. Recessionary waves triggered by global trade tensions, and more specifically, by Trump's aggressive tariff policies. Instead of each side scrambling alone, Varoufakis envisions a synchronized strategy. A double injection of economic adrenaline that would boost investment, stabilize markets, and blunt the impact of American protectionism. Picture it. While the U.S. funnels billions into military spending and trade wars, Europe and China quietly fire up their economies in unison, creating new demand, building infrastructure, and accelerating green tech. It's the kind of economic move that shifts the global balance, not with tanks or sanctions, but with jobs, factories, and innovation. And here's the kicker. Such a move wouldn't just be an economic lifeline. It would send a loud geopolitical message. We don't need to beg Washington for growth. We can create it ourselves. But for Europe's current leadership, this idea is almost unthinkable, not because it wouldn't work, but because it would require breaking the unwritten rule: never make big moves without the U.S. Varoufakis' challenge to Brussels is crystal clear. Stop asking for permission, stop waiting for Washington's nod, and start acting like a player, not a pawn, in the global economy. Varoufakis doesn't just want Europe and China to coordinate economically. He wants them to physically build the future together. He points to history. Siemens and Alstom once partnered with China to build railways. Today, those Chinese railways are faster, more advanced, and more efficient than Europe's own. So his question is brutally simple. Why aren't we doing this again? Imagine Volkswagen joining forces with BYD, Germany's automotive giant and China's electric vehicle powerhouse, to manufacture cutting-edge EVs right in Europe. Not in secret, not as a corporate buyout, but as true joint ventures sharing technology, resources, and production lines. The payoff? European factories buzzing with new jobs, the fastest EV rollout in history, a technology transfer that puts Europe back in the game instead of watching from the sidelines. And here's the twist. Such cooperation wouldn't just be about cars. We're talking solar panels, wind turbines, green hydrogen tech, AI-powered logistics, the industries that will define the next 50 years. It's a future where Europe isn't begging Washington for access to technology, because it's creating it with a partner that actually invests in it. But Varoufakis knows what's holding Brussels back. Fear. Fear of U.S. retaliation. Fear of headlines screaming Europe sides with China. Fear of admitting that the so-called rules-based order is really Washington's order. His solution: stop letting fear write Europe's economic policy. Start letting strategy do it. Because if Europe keeps refusing to build with China, it's not just missing opportunities. It's handing them away. Varoufakis leaves no room for doubt. Europe is drifting into irrelevance, trapped between a rising China and a self-interested U.S. His warning is simple. Stop begging for a seat at America's table and start building your own. The world won't wait. Adapt now, or be left behind.